Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode number 8 here in the Happy Abode. I have been doing some work tweaking our oil system here. So, last time when we were working on it, I was talking about trying to set up something where I limit the water going in to prevent it from breaking. And this is what I came up with. So, basically, what I have here is a loop of water that is fed from our water filtration up here. And so 10 kilograms of water comes in. I have this limited to 1, and that goes through here, and I still do the counterflow here. It doesn't take a lot of heat away, but it dumps it into the oil well, and so we might as well do it. And so the water there stays at 61 degrees. Even if this gets to the point where this heats up over 100 degrees, that water stays fine. The only issue I'll have is when it joins back into the flow. If it's over 100 degrees, when it combines up here, I'm not sure what's going to happen there. So we'll see if that happens when we get to it. We may have some cracking, then we'll have to deal with it. But basically the idea is you see 10 kilograms comes in here, 1 kilogram goes down to the oil well, and then 9 goes past. And then while it's using that water, 9 is continuing to go past. When this gets full and somebody needs to empty it, that 1 kilogram is just going to bypass the oil well and keep flowing and join the flow back up. So this 9 kilograms will become 10. If it's not, then 9 kilogram comes to here, 1 goes in, and then 8 goes past. And the same thing happens. It keeps feeding in until this needs to be emptied for the back pressure to be released. And that makes it so that this 8 is continuing on up here, and if it joins back in, it'll add 1 back to it. So at no point will this loop ever get more than 10, because it's either pulling 1 off or it's pulling it off and then feeding it back on, but it'll stay at the level we need it to be. And then the same thing up here, this would drop it down, and so we should be having currently 7. When these get full, this one's about to get full, I think, because it's at 75%, which means that somebody's coming to empty it. When they stop accepting that water is going to bypass the oil well, and it'll keep looping. And I'm hoping that even if this gets hotter than we want it to, when it joins back up to this loop, the loop should merge and the temperature should even out so we don't have any cracking. But we'll find out. Worst case scenario, we have some cracking, we get some water in our oil, and we got to deal with it. Over here, we have this line feeding on. It only puts in what it needs to cover when it comes back around. So right now, 7 kilograms of water is coming back around. So 3 kilograms per second is feeding under this line to make it 10 again. So that means that we constantly have water there. I could also, if I wanted to, put a limiter here that we only allow 3 through at a time, so that I think that'd be overcomplicated. It would end up piling up and causing us issues. We'd get somewhere where it would cause the line to stop. And this is okay. I don't mind having the water go through the pipe, because all of this pipe on the loop is outside of this central thing. And so the heat out here should never get bad. It's at 51 degrees down here because it's picking up the radiant heat, but it shouldn't ever get as hot as it's going to get inside these systems. Other thing I've been working on, I put in some petroleum generators, and because this is a bionic asteroid and they're breathing out of canisters and they're always in atmosuits, I don't care about the carbon dioxide just being released. Pressure doesn't bother me, the temperature doesn't bother me, the carbon dioxide itself doesn't bother me, so they're just leaving them open. Carbon dioxide's being pumped out into the base, and we are pretty much using these right now. I had an ethanol pit up here, I had one here, and I've been going through and I've been just collecting them up so that all that ethanol gets fed into these petroleum generators. You can see we just finished this one down here, so I can take this pump off. And basically the idea was I wanted to get rid of the ethanol. I have one more up here that I'll have to get then. But But rather than collect it all together to save for later or put it in tanks and probably never use it, I'm just burning it into power, so we're not using coal right now. And we're getting more water back out of it, which is getting dumped into this tank. And this tank is currently the water we're using to create oil. And so now we've made a pretty decent sized pool of oil here. We have what we need to use as a heat sink to make our steel and to make our plastics. So that's where we're at on this asteroid. On the main asteroid, during that time, I did make a mistake, and I'm going to just live with it. I got in here, and I changed this lock out because this lock froze because I had salt water there, but it was all I had at the time. I fed over here, I fed a line from the oil up to our teleporter, and then down here I set up a bottle filler so that we can grab that oil so I can use it, and I use that to make a liquid lock up here. So I was able to get in here and do some work. I put in the pump, and I still have the loop going, but I forgot to connect the hydro sensor. And so while I was working on the oil, this just kept pumping water out. It didn't waste it. It turned it into water that's sitting in here. And frankly, it'll probably be enough to get us through the dormant phase we're in right now. We have another 22 cycles of dormancy here, 11 here, and 25 here. So we're doing all right. But it's not ideal that I emptied this out because I wanted to leave that as like a heat sink for this loop to be able to pick up some heat to keep these from cooling down too much. Now I have to wait for this to produce some more water for that. But I have this loop also going down here through our power system, at least half of it. And so it's picking up a lot of that heat. And so that loop is currently sitting at like 35 degrees. So I think even when these go active and that cold starts hitting them, we should stay high enough that we're not going to have too many problems. We'll see. You know, it's not ideal solution, but it happened. I might set up our liquefier. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to bring that in here and move it to there, and then I'm going to just set it up. But you know what? I should leave this one here because I need somewhere for anything I sweep as far as liquefiables that is not ice, so like the polluted ice and the other things like that to go here. So we can turn off regular ice and snow here, and on this one we'll set it up to be ice and snow, and then we can just set it to not be sweep only, and we can let our duplicates over here, since they don't have as many tasks to do, just run around the map and pick up all the ice and snow and chuck it in here. That way it can melt when we start getting more water to come in and heat it up. Might add to our water supplies. I also want to crack open these last polluted water pools and some of these stuff and clean it up to get it down here. And I'm going to put a pump into this tank, well, these tunnels that have been flooded, so that we can start pumping this up into storage so that we have more water. I do need, I think, to change something to make sure that we're not pumping water into here when we have a shortage on water. So maybe I'll make it so that there's a switch when we only have 5 tanks left, because I'm concerned about the water emptying out. If that happens, we'll still have enough oxygen and hydrogen to last for a while because we have stockpiled a lot with this system. But I don't want to run out of water so that our bathrooms stop working and then we have messes to deal with. So I might put like a limiter on here that stops water flowing into this system, because this system can still run and pump out oxygen and pump out hydrogen even if the electrolyzers shut off. But to do that, I have to kind of crack in here to do it. It's going to be a pain, but we can do it. Take this printout while we're here. I think for now though, I'm gonna just let this go. We'll keep an eye on this water, and if it gets low, then we'll do something to mess around with it. But for now, I want to focus on here. Today, our plans are to get in here, get the setup for our first steel and our first plastics, so that we can move into the mid game with cooling, using the aqua tuner and steam turbine combination. Okay, so what I have done is I installed another transformer here, and I'm sticking with the setup with the two smaller power transformers so that I have a 2 K line, and that will give me just enough power that I can't overload it. And it's been working out good, so I'm going to stick with it. So what we want to get set up on there first is under refinement. We have the metal refinery, and I'm going to put it like this. And I'm going to do a pipe that comes from this to go first. Let me think about how I want to run these. First, I'm going to do a line in that does the oil. So let's do it up here. This line here is not in use anymore, so I can get rid of that. And we'll go like this. We'll come down and we'll feed it into there. And we'll go like that. And all we're going to do here is at the end of this pipe, we're going to put a vent back in to our oil biome here. So basically, this is going to, when we queue up something, it's going to pull in oil as a coolant. It's going to heat it up, making the steel. And then we're going to send the hot oil back, and it'll drop down in here. And because we have a pretty large pool here, it'll absorb that heat. That's the goal anyway. The other thing we're going to need under there is a rock crusher, because I'm going to need to turn some fossils into lime. So let's connect both of those up. And then the last thing is I'm going to need a kiln. Autosave has come to interrupt my day again. And I'm just going to put that one right here. I'm going to put a block here. I'm not worried about opening this up because this is all open anyway. And I'm going to need power for that. Oh no, wait. Kilns don't need power. So that's what we're going to start with. That means we'll be able to make some iron, and then we'll be able to use that iron. Actually, I think I have some iron. Put a few things on our checklist here. I have a little bit of iron. I could probably get some more from the other side, but I have iron ore. We want to see coal. We already have one there. I want to see how much fossil we have. Oh, we have a good amount of it. That's great. So basically, we're going to use the rock crusher to turn some fossil into lime. We're going to use the kiln to turn coal into refined carbon. And then those two things mix with the iron ore to make steel. At least I think that's how it goes. It's been a minute since I set it up. But we'll see here in just a second, once I have the recipe going, what exactly we need. So iron to steel uses the refined carbon, the lime, and the iron. For iron, we just need iron ore to iron. So I'm going to do 99 crafts of that. So as soon as we have power and the coolant line hooked up, this is going to start processing some iron ore into iron for us. And this is a much better system than using this to make iron, because this you get 50k back, and this one we get 100k back. So it's 100% conversion from iron ore to iron, whereas we lose half of it and it gets converted to sand in this process. Got our first iron ore to iron process going here. And oil is coming in here at 50 degrees, and you can see it's coming out at 120 degrees. So that was from one process. So basically what it does is it pulls in enough crude oil to fill up the metal refinery, and then when it has the iron ore in it, somebody comes over, they do a little bit of work, and then we get iron back out of it. Then the hot oil comes down here, and it drops back down to here and jumps into our pool. Our pool's at like 55 degrees, pretty much around 54, 55. So that 120 degree oil isn't going to have a huge effect on the overall heat of this pool because there's such a large thermal mass here. So basically we're losing that heat by absorbing it into a large mass of oil. So if we had done this with a tiny bit of oil, it would have very quickly overheated that oil. Then we would have started breaking things. We could have, if we got anything in here like water, it would have turned to steam, and it would have just made a, ugly mess. That's why we wanted to have at least a little pool of oil before we did that. You can do this with other liquids too. You can actually do it with, I think salt works fine. Let me actually go in here and look. So if we use salt water turns to steam at 99.7 degrees. So the heat in there would have caused the pipes to crack probably as salt water. Let's check with brine. But in a pinch, you can use other things, is basically all I'm trying to say. Brine's a little bit better. And you can even do like petroleum, which is what we use later on when we do this. Petroleum is much better to do it because you can get a lot more heat out of the petroleum, so you can just loop it, and then we'll use a aqua tuner and steam turbine setup to cool it back down rather than dumping it back out. And that's what we'll use later on so that we can keep doing this in a renewable way instead of just dumping it out here. Oh, I must have hit something here by accident. There we go. So I do have some water jumping down here from out here. I'm concerned about that causing issues. Oh, it looks like it did somehow make it in here. I don't even know how it did that. It must have turned to steam when it landed here and then cooled and then fell down in. It's not going to be a big deal. It'll sit on top of the oil. I'll clean it out later. Not a problem. But we're just going to let this go for a while, make a whole bunch of iron for us until we have a decent amount, and then we're going to turn some of that iron to steel. All we want to do here is get enough to make 2 tons of steel, because 2 tons of steel is enough for us to make a thermal aqua tuner, which takes 1,200 steel. And then we want some more steel for like sensors and cables. And we need enough steel for... actually, I don't even know if I've researched it yet. We're probably going to have to get into the research for the steam turbine. But the steam turbine uses 800. So basically we want 2 tons and a little extra for some of the cabling and stuff. And then we can set up a system where we have an aqua tuner that feeds the heat into a steam turbine and deletes it. And we can set that up with this refinery so that that heat is deleted in an efficient manner and we don't add heat back into our environment, which is our goal. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to get a couple tons of steel. Next thing we're going to work on is doing some plastic. And so I'm just going to build a little place to set here. What we need for that is we need an oil refinery to make some petroleum, and we're going to do a polymer press, and this we're literally just going to do enough plastic so that we can make 1 steam turbine, because I don't want to be doing this using this process. Eventually I want to be able to convert the oil to petroleum without using the refinery. I'm just putting these down so we can see what they do. This takes in crude oil and a bunch of power, and it gives us petroleum. We get half the petroleum back, and we get natural gas out of it. So we're going to want to set this up in a room where we can handle the natural gas being contained, and we'll probably want to start setting up some natural gas generators to use up the natural gas we're getting before we do that too. So I don't want to build this here because it'll do that. When it comes to the polymer press takes in petroleum and then uses power, and it will put out plastic and steam and carbon dioxide and a bunch of heat. So those are things we need to worry about. We're going to do it a real messy fashion here for the start, because it's not going to be our permanent system, but we will get it set up so that we can at least do it in a way where we can control the byproducts as best as we can. This rock crusher, I want to start just turning fossil to lime forever for now, because there is no really a more efficient way to do the fossil to lime, and we need a lot of lime for steel, and coal to refined carbon is pretty much the same way. This is the process we're going to be using endgame. I just don't want to do a ton of it because this is going to generate a lot of heat. We don't want to put in too much heat. Though heat on this map isn't really too much of a problem right now. This area is very cold already. So we're going to set this to forever for now, and we'll just let it go so that we can get some of these set up so that when we have enough iron, we can make our steel. I determined what my issue with water down here was. I had forgotten that this is where I was collecting ice from up here and other places so that it wouldn't spill down. I created this little bucket so that if the ice melted, it stayed in here. So when I cracked this open and I put some heat down here, it melted and it all drained down in. So I cleaned up the water that got into our oil, and I set up some auto sweepers here. So right now they're set to just pick up anything liquefiable, and they're loading it into this conveyor loader, which is bringing it up here. And then I set up this door where duplicants cannot get in through the door, so they can't get to where I've dropped off the ice and other liquefiables. And so they get dropped off here, and then this brings in and puts it here. I have it set up this way because I also have this one set up for sweep only on anything else. And I'm going to... Basically what I'll do is when I have stuff here, when I pick up the other stuff, I'll just set it to sweep. And then this sweeper will put it in here and it'll drop it off down onto this side. But that way I can just drop stuff here, and then this sweeper will determine where it's all going. And then I don't have to worry about any problems with our duplicates picking the stuff up and putting it back in. And right now, since this is set for not sweep only, any other ice that's around the map, when they have a free moment, they'll go and get it. In fact, I should put this to a lower priority, just because I don't want them doing that instead of their jobs that I assign them. So we're getting all the ice and stuff out of here so that we can keep doing the metal refining in here without making a pond for us to deal with. So that's the next step, and then we're going to work on doing the plastic like we had talked about. It's dirty and it's messy, but we have our setup going. There was just enough space here to fit in the oil refinery, so I put it in here with an airlock so that we can keep the natural gas in here. I figured this was a good spot because then we can just put in a pump and grab this when we empty out the natural gases that are in here. These plug slugs I really need to take care of and put away somewhere so that they're not just going in here. Maybe do that in the next episode. The oil here, I just ran enough oil in here, processed petroleum to fill up this about halfway through, and I have now processing that into plastic. So the plastics, they put out a little bit of steam, which is just, it's so small that it just turns into water because it's not a huge amount, and so it just makes some liquid at the bottom of them. And they give off carbon dioxide, which you can pipe somewhere, but because the whole map is filled with carbon dioxide, I just ran it into the pipe so that I could make enough to put in a high pressure vent and then just vented it out. So it's now just adding more carbon dioxide into our smog planet here, which is no problem at all. So now I just have jobs queued up. I'm still cleaning up the floor down here of some more of the stuff that was sitting here. And I made it so that there is a little bit of a bowl here so that any water that falls down as things melt up here don't go into our oil. I should probably put up some kind of a pump just in case it gets too full, but I think it's only going to be little tiny bits as things melt, especially as I have it set up so that anything liquefiable should be brought to our dispenser here as quick as we possibly can. So I think it'll be fine. So I'm not going to worry about it. Worst case scenario, we just have to add a filter to our pump to send the water off when we're running oil out of our oil biome down here. This oil is going to keep running and producing more oil while we process through this water here. I don't have a renewable water source over here, but the plan going forward is going to be, we're going to figure out we're going to take this oil and we're going to ship it through our supply teleporter input here. It'll come out over here, and so our oil output will be right here, and then we're going to run that down here to the magma biome where we can set up a simple boiler setup, which will boil the oil into petroleum, and then the petroleum will get sent back through our supply teleporter input here back to the other colony, where it will come out right here, and then we can use that petroleum here in the Bionic planet to produce A, to make power, and B, to produce all the items that we want to do with that. So we're going to be converting some spaces here to do an industrial block, and we'll be setting up steel production and other refined metal production here. We'll be setting up all of our hot processes will be here, where we're not so concerned about the heat, and we're not concerned about the carbon dioxide, because our duplicates here are very well suited for working in those environments. And so that is going to be the plan. So we can't send water over to the oil wells to keep producing oil, because we're already going to be sending petroleum back, which means the water for our oil wells in the future will be the byproduct from our petroleum. So we'll be doing a little bit of math to figure out exactly how much, but we'll be processing the oil into petroleum, which we can do with the boiler at a 1-to-1 ratio. And so if we take the oil and make petroleum out of it, then when we process petroleum through our petroleum generator, does it show it in here? Maybe. See if I just missed it. Maybe it does not. Let's see. Let's bring up our petroleum generator. See if we can find some stats in here. Petroleum. Okay, so petroleum generator brings in 2K of combustible liquid. At that time, it gives off 500 grams of carbon dioxide, and it gives off 750 grams of polluted water. When we put water into our oil wells, we need basically 1 gram per second of polluted water, which means that we need to produce 3 kilograms per second to keep all 3 oil wells running. So as far as petroleum generators, that means we need to have 4 of them running, which means we need to use 8 kilograms per second of petroleum. When we run all 3 of these, we have 3 of them running, and they produce 3.3 kilograms per second of oil, which means they're going to be producing 10. So we produce 10 kilograms of oil, which gets processed into 10 kilograms of petroleum, and then we use 4. Well, let me look at that again. We're going to be doing 4 of those, so that's 8. We use 8 kilograms of petroleum to produce enough water to keep these running. And then we'll be able to do 1 more petroleum generator, so we'll be doing 5 in total, which means that we can get an extra 2 kilograms of water as an extra from running 3 of these oil wells. So that means that 2 kilograms of water can be used to run the base here. So the little bit of water that we would need for sinks, which I don't even think we actually use the sink, that's just there to give us the washroom bonus. But there are some other things we'll end up using water for, and then eventually we can use that to produce the oxygen for this side of the asteroid, so that we don't need to be sending oxygen through to here. And what I think I'll end up doing is the natural gas here, instead of using that for power here, since we're going to have petroleum, we'll ship off all the extra natural gas we get to add to the natural gas generators on the main asteroid. So it'll be like the 2 systems are working together to provide different things for each side. We'll be able to ship back plastics and refined metals and steel to help build the main colony. And in exchange, we're going to do the petroleum boiling here and ship the petroleum back. Sound like a good plan? I'm glad you like it. So we basically have, right now we just need to produce enough steel that we can get set up to build a proper cooling block for our metal refinery so that we can cool it off. So as I said before, we need a minimum of 2K of steel for that, because we need 1.2 tons for the aqua tuner, and then we need 800K to build the steam turbine. And then once we have those set up and made out of steel, they'll last forever, and they'll be able to cool off metal refineries, and we'll be able to set this process up to work 100% efficiently to produce all the metals and stuff that we need. And then we can just grow from there. So in the next episode, that's what we're going to work on. We do need to do some research before we can get to that, because we need our steam turbines, which I think steam turbine is here. Yeah, I was on the right spot. So steam turbine is right there. But to do that, we need to do the material studies research. And the material studies research, we can actually research the ability to do it, but we need to set up a material studies terminal, which will require a little bit of radiation for us to unlock this research for us to move on. So we'll be setting that up in the next episode as well as the at least getting started on the process of making a petroleum boiler and getting our refined metals up and running. So a lot to come in the next couple of episodes to get us into the mid game, but we are doing well, and we can keep this process just running, producing oil for us in the background. In the meantime, I have a whole bunch of water here. My goal is to just process all of this polluted water into water and dump it into our oil wells until we get this whole oil reservoir filled, and then we can shut it off. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.